Heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and might, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Whilst we're still standing, please, I want us to take the national pledge. Please, on 3, the national pledge. But before we do that, paparazzi, can you move, please? Move very quickly. You're taking our time. Please move very quickly. Please move. Thank you, paparazzi. Thank you, thank you. So, on 3, we will take the national pledge. 1, 2, 3. I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, to defend her unity, and uphold her honor and glory. So help me. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We may be seated. Thank you very much. To defend her unity is something His Excellency the Vice President has been doing long before he became the Vice President of our great country. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, GCON.
Hello and welcome to the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, reaching you live from the International Conference Center, Abuja, venue of the maiden edition of the Nigeria International Petroleum Summit. It's been 5 days of frank talk and deliberations on properly positioning the oil and gas industry as driver of the Nigeria and by extension the African economy, with the theme leading Africa's response to global oil and gas challenges. The summit has provided avenue to review and address mistakes of the past and the way forward in positioning the nation for competition in the global oil industry. After intense deliberations covering various perspectives from Africa on the global stage, the opportunities and challenges of the oil and gas investment to the world oil outlook for 2018 and the energy transition, downstream matters, local content development, community and environmental issues, and of course, gas development, the consensus has been one of a step in the right direction. It's now time to wrap up, and Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, is on ground.
We are delighted to have joining us for this closing ceremony our Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, GCON. Can we please give him one more round of applause? Your Excellencies, we have been entertained by a lot of cultural performance during the course of this week. His Excellency, the Vice President, is just rising from one meeting to this one. Please indulge us to entertain for... Okay, thank you. We continue now to the very agenda of the closing ceremony, as I'd like to welcome the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources for the vote of thanks for this 4-day conference. Please welcome Dr. Yemi Esong for the vote of thanks. Please, let's welcome her.
Your Excellency, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Emmanuel Ibe Kachukwu, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and a delight to give the vote of thanks as the inaugural Nigeria International Petroleum Summit, NIPS, draws to a close. But for the thought of family and our individual commitments of our various stations and destinations, I would have wished that these were reopening remarks. While this could appear to be a self-centered wish, I would urge you that it is a heartfelt expression of the joy within me for the remarkable and rewarding time spent together with you all, and my denial of the reality that we have to bid one another farewell. But as a wise saying goes, and I quote, "To meet and to depart is the way of life, but to depart and to meet is the hope of life." So it is comforting and reassuring to know that this meeting will no doubt herald a new era of hope and life for Africa's petroleum industry and its entire economy. Your Excellencies, invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, while many experiences have been shared here, and most certainly many lessons have been learned, one message that should go out loud and clear from this summit is that Africa and Africans need to connect and leverage on the capabilities and opportunities within as well as those out there. African countries must look inwards, learn from the past mistakes, and move to utilize their vast, untapped hydrocarbon resources, not just as a commodity, but as a catalyst to drive the economy of Africa. Now to my vote of thanks. Mr. Vice President, my appreciation, first of all, goes to God Almighty for bringing us all here and for spending this time together. My appreciation also goes to His Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, who graciously declared the summit open on Monday through his representative, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Barrister Boss Mustafa. We thank Mr. President for his support, determination, and commitment to provide the necessary leadership and growth for Africa's petroleum industry. Your Excellency, the Vice President, you will recall that in July last year, you graciously unveiled NIPS. And therefore, our gratitude to you is extended once again for accepting to be here in spite of your very, very busy schedule today. Your Excellency, thank you very, very much. We also like to thank state governors that came in person and those that sent representatives, state commissioners that stayed with us for the 4 days, members of the National Assembly who were here at the opening and stayed with us also. I would also like to express appreciation to the entire petroleum industry for receiving this initiative with open arms and giving it all the requisite backing, even at the highest levels of governance. It must be put on record that the magnanimous cooperation and buy-in of the entire industry was fundamental to the success of the summit, and for this, we're very, very grateful. Now, I would like to thank the Minister of State, Petroleum. He conceived this idea, and he drove the idea. He not only drove the idea, but he drove all of us to succeed at this idea. Honorable Minister, thank you very much for your leadership and for the opportunity you have given all of us in the ministry to exhibit the excellence which you portray. I also want to thank the African ministers that are here present. Thank you very much for coming, and we hope that next year you will also be here. The Secretary Generals of APO, OPEC, and IEF, I also thank you for your presence with us. My vote of thanks will not be complete if I do not give special recognition to our own, that is the parastatals in the ministry: NNPC, DPR, PTDF, PEF, PTI, PPPRA, NCDMB, and NNRA. Thank you all very much. Finally, I'd like to appreciate the delegates who have stayed with us the past 4 days. You have been the best audience anybody could ask for. Thank you for your lively contributions and for sitting through all the sessions. Thank you very much. I also thank James Brevity, who has been working behind the scenes with the ministry to make sure that we succeed at this conference. Thank you very much. The MC, I must make special mention of the MC. He has done wonderfully well. Mr. Richmond Osuji, you've gone beyond the call of duty to ensure the success of the event, both during the day and in the evenings. Your Excellency, our media partners also, thank you very much. We thank you for the mileage you have given the summit, and we ask that you will continue even after the summit. Your Excellencies, invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you, thank you, thank you.
We can do better with a round of applause for our permanent secretary, whom the minister reminded us drove the team on his behalf to deliver this assignment. Once again, thank you for thanking the MC. Thank you very much, ma. Thank you. Your Excellencies, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, he has been described with a lot of adjectives because of his patriotism, passion, and dedication to the Nigerian dream. Some say he's undaunted, some say he's immutable, some say he's sagacious. Some say he's sagacious, and we all know for a truth, this man's commitment to the growth of the oil and gas industry, we cannot question but celebrate. At this time, I'd like for us to please join me in welcoming a man whom, listening to the Chadian representative, said has truly created a platform for Africans to express themselves in this industry. Welcome the visionary and the dreamer that has brought all of us into this room. The Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Emmanuel Ibe Kachukwu.
You're welcome, sir. Your Excellency, Professor Emesi Banjo, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, let all distinguished personalities who are here present. I was almost afraid that by the time Dr. Sean finished her speech, the Vice President will be walking out. He has very limited time. He's come during a break time to grace this time, so we need to give him time to make his speech. Mr. Vice President, I had left my speech until you come because for two reasons. One, I know that you're an intellectual of repute, and two, I know you're also an executor. And so the whole idea was that an analysis of what has happened over the last 4 years, done very quickly, will put some perspectives in the huge work that lies ahead, which, incidentally, as the chairman of the Economic Council himself, you will lead. What are the challenges ahead in the oil industry? Not just for Nigeria, but for Africa. The first is regulatory. We must fairly quickly establish regulatory and legislative certainty. Whatever you need to do with the PIB, the various arms of it needs to be done and done quickly so that investors can have clarity in terms of where they can underpin their investment. Transparency is key. we continue to have the negative vibes on transparency, despite all that has been done in the oil sector. What it says to us is that something must still be missing. It's either we're not connecting in the message, or we're not connecting in the results, or we're not connecting in the policies. But every average Nigerian still believes that the oil sector is not as transparent as it should. So a whole amount of work, given the fact that the cardinal focus of this administration under yours and the president's leadership is anti-corruption, we must ensure that whatever we do, we continue to give serious attention to the issue of transparency. We need to look at our processes, we need to look at our contractual terms, we need to review our patronage culture, we need to diversify the opportunity. A whole lot more people are brought into the player mix in this industry. When we are transparent, investors get the confidence to be able to come in droves. We need to look at investment. What we have done over the last 2 years has helped. Suddenly, we're looking at investments portfolio over the next 2 to 3 years of close to 40 billion, which includes the coming back to stream of a lot of the FIDs that had been postponed by the oil sectors. But 40 billion is not enough to drive this industry. Our estimate is that you need about 100 billion in investments to drive this sector. Those investments will go into gas projects. They'll go into the pipelines that have to be replaced. They'll go into new plants. They'll go into the flare policy of the federal government. They'll go to development of LPG, LNG, CNG assembly plants. And we'll need to begin to convert our cars from petrol consumption cars to gas-driven and electricity-driven cars fairly quickly. A huge amount of investment needs to go to the downstream so that we can avoid, both in terms of refineries, so we can avoid some of the embarrassments that we keep seeing daily in terms of the supply mix. There are issues of security. We have done a huge amount of work, and you led that effort in terms of all the tours to the Niger Delta communities. We thank you very much. I'll continue to appreciate you for that leadership. But a whole lot more needs to. The message that comes out is that, fine, they can hear us loud and clear, but that long-term emplacements must be put in place to ensure that the Niger Delta feels part of the system, part of a going concern, and part of an ownership model. And we'll look to you to drive this. Cost is key. I think we all agree that there was a need to address the cost issues again. The federal government worries about the fact, in fact, the Federation worries about the fact that whilst countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the rest are targeting cost profiles below $10, we are still oscillating in the mid-20s. It is heartening to know that at least one or two of the IOCs have been able to achieve production costs of about $15. We need to get everybody else to buy into that model. And one of the things you're going to be seeing as we look at new policies is how to incentivize those who have the least cost production and not penalize, but quite frankly, pull the ears of those who continue to want to run the high cost profile. In an era in which OPEC quotas are going to be obviously in place over the next 2 years, I will not be surprised if we get to a point where those who give us the least cost oil get the first preference in terms of the barrels that we have to put up for production. So cost is very important, and we need to look at it. Host community issues I've already mentioned. Now, policy. It is so important. There are so many major policies that we need to take, and they can no longer wait. Whether it is the private sector participation, whether it's the issue of costing, whether it's the issue of the whole subsidy regime, whether it's the issue of private sector investment, they've become so critical for the survival of this industry, and we're looking to you to drive this. So over the next 5 years, what are our milestones? First, we'd like to look at a production volume targeting about 3 million barrels over the next 5 years, and the projects that we have on ground can get us there. So whatever we need to do, we need to race towards ensuring that the capital that is available to drive this is not sucked out by other investment opportunities that people have. Pipeline replacement is key. We must be able to distribute in a professional and unhindered manner all over the country, whether it's crude to refineries, whether it's crude to the export lines, or whether it's refined products. We need to find a way of leasing this out to the private sector, tariffing it, and bringing efficiency. Downstream deregulation, obviously, maybe not now, but futuristically, we need to begin to address this. The earlier we can find a model where people can bring in their products and sell their products without all the attachments and hindrances that we see in the sector today, the better for this country. Power sufficiency is something you have driven, and the President is very focused on. Until we give power to our people, whenever they need it, all the time, this country can never take off. So our gas policies must be geared towards ensuring, both in terms of investments in the gas sector, for production purposes, but also investment in terms of distribution, and investment in this in terms of distribution of power itself, that will race, quite frankly, to the finish line on this. With 180 million people, huge entrepreneurial potentials, this is something waiting to happen that will help us. Local content is key. We're probably a lot of work done so far. We're in the 27% compliance level. We'd like to see over the next 5 years this driven over the 50% finish line. Refining and pipelining, we've already mentioned. We're working on our own refineries. There are investments beginning to come in. 3 of the potential modular refineries are largely near to beginning to crystallize. We're hoping to do about 9 to 10 of those between this year and next year in terms of getting them to points of construction. So excellent drive, excellent result. But it is important, like we said, by end of 2019, that some real-time delivery on refining is in place to reduce the foreign exchange drain. Data still, we've done a lot in terms of opening up the sector to data availability, to information availability. But technical data availability to those who do research and those who do investment is still not an open field. We've encouraged, and I think DPR now has a policy whereby we need to domicile in Nigeria all the data that is applicable to oil industry in Nigeria rather than having it stay abroad in headquarters. We need to begin to see how that becomes available for those who need to make investment decisions. Education in the sector needs to be rejigged. Fantastic, fancy degrees are fine, but quite frankly, we need to go back to what are the needs in this sector. Needs in engineering, needs in sciences, needs in application degrees, and needs, quite frankly, in the skill set areas, especially issues of welding and being able to do the very basics. Major Nigerian oil companies, I like to see them excitedly come on board. We are at about 10% of the contribution in production today. We need to do more. I'm targeting over that 5-year period a move to at least 25 to 30%, which means that we need to see what incentives are essential for them to continue to take some of the blocks that the IOCs are dropping and begin to bring them back in a very realistic manner back into the market and back into contribution. We talked in Houston last year about the Project 100, which will develop 100 Nigerian companies that are doing something that is unique in the sector and help them grow by giving them opportunities, giving them financing, giving them technical skills. That is something we're hoping, Your Excellency, that about April this year you will help us formally launch. It's a major project, will generate jobs, generate ideas, generate creative. So I'll be working with the oil companies to find out some of those medium-type companies that have worked with you in terms of provision of services, and working and hand-holding together with you, those companies, to enable them grow to a level where they can become significant in this sector. Africa and African market is very key for us. As OPEC begins to get into the drilling in a way in which regional maps and regional markets become very protected and essential, the Gulf coming together in their own, Asia coming together in their own, America beginning to recede backwards and becoming self-sufficient, the African market holds the potential for us. So we must look, whether it's in refined petroleum product, whether it is in transfer of technology and skill set, whether it's in the taking of advantages in terms of opportunities for this sector by local Nigerian companies, we need to begin to protect the African market and utilize it to its fullest potentials. Niger Delta issues, I've already said we need to do more. A huge amount of work done, good collaboration, good integration with Niger Delta Ministry and all the agencies that operate here. But we need to begin to move from the usual perception that we're getting when there are problems to putting together a long-term map process that will enable us to work with the governors. I've challenged the governors who have attended here. There is a need for them on a regional basis as South-South to begin to come together to do cross-border investments, whether it be roads, whether it be railway, whether it be power distribution. A whole lot needs to happen here. We've begun that process under your leadership. We're going to be working to get to the future line. Finally, what is the future? The future is promising, lots of opportunities, lots of energy beginning to sort of get off the ground. A lot of that because of the work that has been done over 2 years under your leadership and that of the President. There's going to be challenges. There are fiscal issues that need to be addressed to empower everybody to invest in this sector. We're holding those conversations. But what we see is that although the oil sector remains a very small employer of labor because of its very technical nature, it, however, provides a catalyst for the expansion of the entire economy in this country. And whatever diversification efforts we want to put is going to be completely dependent on how well we run this. In very many ways, therefore, the oil sector must not just be transparent. It must indeed lead in transparency and lead in the opportunities. I thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources. I think we can do well to give him another round of applause. He's conquered with Nigeria and her people to improve the lives of the children, citizens, and adults alike is one thing that fuels his passion to make himself available on a day like this in spite of his busy schedule. He's a man whose nomination as vice presidential candidate elicited a lot of positive reactions from Nigerians, and many celebrated. Not because they knew him one-on-one, but because they know he's a man who has a lot of integrity coming into public office. They know he's a man who believes in transparency and due process. They know he's a man who is a leader of men to see positive change in their lives. He is, of course, our vice president. We are delighted, we are proud to have this quintessential lawyer and astute entrepreneur himself he is. Please welcome this public servant of repute, His Excellency, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, SAN-GCON.
Thank you very much. Please sit. Members of the National Assembly present, Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum, Dr. Emmanuel Ibe Kachiku, Ministers of Petroleum Resources from other African countries present, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, heads of agencies and parastatals of government, heads of international organizations, former Minister of Petroleum, Chief Don Obot Etiebet, Your Excellencies of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished discussants, delegates and guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I'm deeply honored to have been invited to be here today to formally close the first edition of the Nigerian International Petroleum Summit, the African Petroleum and Technology Conference, which started on Monday, 19th of February 2018. It is gratifying that this summit, which was first conceived less than a year ago by the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ibe Kachiku, after attending the annual Offshore Technology Conference in Houston, has materialized with resounding success. I had the privilege of unveiling the logo of this summit, as the Permanent Secretary has mentioned, during the extraordinary session of the African Petroleum Producers Organization, APPO, here in Abuja last July. I'm pleased to learn that the key stakeholders of the industry in the country, both local and international partners, have given the summit the support needed to achieve the success that has been recorded, despite the rather short notice given to them. I commend also the various state governments, the Federal Capital Territory, and ministers that participated in this summit. But even more impressive and gladdening is that a number of African oil-producing countries hearkened to our call to the first Nigeria International Petroleum Summit, and that present here with us today are several ministers from African oil-producing countries. Indeed, given the level of support of the first edition of this summit, the prospects of a future summit are very bright indeed. And it may not be out of place for the organizers to consider making it a continent-wide summit. I believe this first summit has set the foundation for the achievement of the objectives of its founding fathers, namely to create the hub of Africa's oil and gas activities on the African continent. I'm told that participation has been well over 1,000 delegates, exhibitors and visitors from over 32 countries from Africa and outside the continent. There are 92 exhibition stands. This maiden edition of the summit has certainly set the pace for subsequent summits, and a very fast pace indeed. The summit is unique in the sense that provision was also made for special technical workshops for students of junior and secondary and senior secondary schools, as well as universities, at no cost, I'm told, to the participants. And I hope that the organizers will sustain this practice which will kindle the interest of students in the oil and gas industry. Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, it is clear that Africa must increasingly look within for solutions to resolve the challenges that impede the growth of industry, of commerce, and of economic growth generally. In addition, the increasing number of African countries joining the League of Oil and Gas Producing States calls for greater cooperation amongst the old and the new in the industry. With the largest proven gas reserves in Africa and the 7th largest in the world, over 38 billion barrels of oil reserve and a daily production of in excess of 2 million barrels, and the continent's largest concentration of skilled manpower for the oil and gas industry, built over 30 years or more. Naturally, Nigeria's experiences can be useful to other African countries. I believe that the NIPS, therefore, provides a good opportunity for the exchange of experiences amongst the large and small, the old and the new, and the potential oil-producing states in Africa. Furthermore, the summit and its side events, the exhibitions, have laid a solid foundation to encourage the growth of local content in the African oil and gas industry, and to provide a forum for the display of the progress that Africa is making in the field of oil and gas technology. It also provides African engineers and fabricators a platform to showcase what they're able to produce locally, while providing for our academics and scientists a forum to exchange thoughts on the way forward for the industry on the continent. I'm pleased to hear that this first edition of the summit actually provided a forum for bringing together the continent's key stakeholders in the oil and gas industry, namely ministers and other policymakers, investors, and operators, to review developments and chart a new course forward for the oil and gas industry on the continent. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the challenge for Africa is certainly enormous. Many of the traditional markets for oil in Europe and Asia, of course, developing alternatives. This is at the same time that this coincides with some African countries just making finds. The volatility of the oil market is another serious challenge. These are not challenges that can be addressed successfully solely by countries taking independent decisions. Collaboration, synergies, and knowledge sharing are critical. For us in Africa, we have to work hard to make the best of our God-given resources before it's too late. Together, we can surmount our hurdles faster than if we try to do so individually. I should like to assure our oil and gas operators of the federal government of Nigeria's commitment to creating the enabling environment for the industry to achieve its destiny in Africa. As you are aware, in our determination to introduce legislation that will remove all encumbrances to efficient conduct of oil and gas businesses, and learning from past experience, we split the Omnibus Petroleum Industry Bill into a number of proposed legislations, maybe 3 in all, some of which have been approved already by the Executive Council for presentation to the National Assembly for their consideration. And we believe that this will be done speedily, and already we're seeing signs that a lot of work has been done by the National Assembly. I should like to end with a word of appreciation to the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, the dynamic and able Emmanuel Ibekachiku, and his team, and the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Yemi Eson, and the team at the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, as well as all of those who have participated in making this a worthwhile event. I wish you all, particularly our brothers from outside Nigeria, a safe journey back home, and we hope to see you again with a larger delegation next year. International Petroleum Summit closed. Thank you.
Please, let's keep that applause coming and louder for His Excellency, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. While we're standing, Jaffe Davis, please, the National Anthem. As we take the National Anthem, His Excellency leaves, and I'll make a few announcements to conclude. Please, go ahead.
Arise, O compatriot. Nigeria's call obey, to serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and might, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
This anthem will be played 6 or 7 times at the World Cup in Russia.
That's how it has been as the first